Hello survivors, thank you for tuning in. It's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink and listen to the story The Last Command, Pentagon versus Zombie Outbreak. Let's start the story. The dawn sky bleeds orange through the smoke rising from Arlington, and I can taste copper in the air, blood, cordite, and the acrid stench of burned flesh. 22 days since the world went to hell. And here I stand atop the Pentagon's southwest rooftop, M4 carbine gripped tight in my hands, watching thousands of infected surge against our perimeter like a tide of rotting humanity. Flamethrower Team Delta, engage Sector 7. I bark into my radio headset, watching a particularly dense cluster of infected pressing against our reinforced concrete barriers. The response is immediate. Twin streams of liquid fire arc from mounted positions, turning the morning air into a furnace. The infected don't scream when they burn. They just keep moving forward until their legs give out and they collapse into smoldering heaps. 3 weeks ago, I was General Matthew Fox, signing procurement reports and attending budget meetings. Now I'm just Fox, and my hands are permanently stained with gun oil and dried blood. The stars on my shoulders mean nothing to these mindless creatures below, but they mean everything to the 800 souls we've got sheltered inside this fortress. General. Staff Sergeant Gable scrambles up beside me, his uniform torn and face streaked with soot. Northern Perimeter is reporting ammunition concerns. They're down to 30% on rifle rounds. I scan the horizon through my binoculars. The infected stretch as far as I can see. A shambling mass of former neighbors, co-workers, maybe even soldiers who didn't make it to safety in time. They move without coordination, driven only by the basic impulse to feed. Some still wear business suits, others hospital scrubs. A few drag mangled limbs behind them. Why? Yet they keep coming with that horrible persistence that never stops, never tires. Tell Lieutenant Maxim to prioritize headshot, I order Gable, and remind his people that noise draws more of them, controlled bursts only. The sergeant nods and speaks rapidly into his radio. Below us, I watch one of our Marines take careful aim from a sandbag position and drop 3 infected with precise shots to the skull. Good training shows even when the world's ending. The Pentagon wasn't designed to be a fortress, but we've made it one. Concrete barriers stolen from highway construction sites form our outer perimeter. Razor wire coils between them like steel thorns. Every entrance except the main sally port has been welded shut with steel plates. The courtyard has been transformed into a killing field with overlapping fields of fire from elevated positions. But it's the flamethrower systems that truly make this place defensible. When the first waves hit us 2 weeks ago, I realized conventional firearms weren't enough. These things don't feel pain, don't fear death. A gut shot that would drop a living human just slows them down. But fire stops them permanently. Chief Warrant Officer Morse, formerly of the Corps of Engineers, had the brilliant idea to mount industrial flamethrowers on rotating platforms across our roofline. Diesel fuel was easier to find than ammunition, and the psychological effect on our defenders was significant. There's something deeply satisfying about watching a mass of infected disappear in a wall of flame. Movement on the east side calls out Private Lerman from her spotting position, large group breaking off from the main horde. I swing my binoculars east and count roughly 40 infected, shambling away from the primary mass, drawn by some stimulus I can't identify. Maybe one of our patrols is returning. Maybe a survivor is making a run for our gates. Either our way, it's an opportunity. Team Charlie, redirect your sector to support eastern approaches. I command and somebody find out what's drawing them that direction. The infected don't strategize. They don't coordinate attacks or probe for weaknesses. They're driven purely by hunger and the basic sensory input of sight, sound, and smell. This makes them predictable in some ways, terrifying in others. You can't negotiate with them, can't frighten them away, can't appeal to whatever humanity they once possessed. They'll walk through fire to reach fresh meat, and they'll keep coming until every last one is destroyed. Inside the Pentagon, we've carved out a sanctuary for the survivors who made it here before we sealed the gates. Families from the surrounding neighborhoods, government workers who were here when everything started, military personnel and their dependent. Dr. Rachel Stone runs our makeshift medical facility in what used to be the building's main cafeteria. She's treating everything from infected bites that haven't turned yet to broken bones from construction work. The hardest part isn't the constant fighting, it's the weight of command when every decision means life or death for people who trusted you to keep them safe. 3 days ago, I spotted a group of survivors through my binoculars. Families with children waving desperately from a rooftop 6 blocks away. They'd managed to get our attention with a mirror, flashing signals in our direction. But between us and them stretched an ocean of infected, thousands of them, drawn by the noise of our defenses. Any rescue attempt would have been suicide, and opening our gates would have compromised everyone inside the fortress. I watched helplessly as the infected finally breached their building. The children's screams still echo in my sleep. General Fox. Master Sergeant Andrews climbs up from the stairwell, breathing hard. We've got radio contact with Fort Belvoir. They're still operational, but reporting massive infected concentrations moving south along I-95. This is the first communication we've had with a Nothar air military installation in 4 days. Fort Myer fell on day 18. Andrews Air Force Base went silent yesterday morning. Each lost installation represents hundreds of soldiers and civilians who didn't make it. What's their status? I ask, keeping my voice steady despite the relief flooding through me. Approximately 300 personnel remaining, but they're requesting permission to attempt breakout to our location. Their ammunition situation is critical. I consider this carefully. Fort Belvoir is 12 ME south, a death trap of suburban streets crawling with infected. But if they can make it here, those 300 soldiers would double our defensive capabilities. Tell them negative on the breakout, I decide. Too risky in daylight. If they can hold until nightfall, we might be able to coordinate something. Right now, we can't risk losing anyone to a rescue mission. Andrews nods and heads back to the radio room. Leadership means making choices that feel like betrayal, but keep the maximum number of people alive. I've made a lot of those choices recently. A fresh wave of infected appears from the direction of Columbia Pike, drawn by the smoke and noise of our defenses. I estimate another 200. Some are fresher converts, still wearing recognizable clothing, facial features intact. Others are further along in decomposition, skin blackened and pulling away from bone, yet still driven forward by whatever neurological damage creates these things. All teams prepare for secondary engagement, I announce. Approximately 200 approaching from the southwest. Team Bravo initiate controlled burn on my mark. The infected reach our outer barrier and begin pressing against it with that mindless persistence. They don't try to climb over or find gaps, they just push forward until the obstacles in their path are removed or they're destroyed. The concrete holds, but I can see the strain on the barriers where previous assaults have weakened the structure. Mark, I call out. Twin streams of fire lance out from Team Bravo's position, turning the front ranks of infected into human torches. The ones behind them walk straight through the flames, their clothing catching fire as they continue forward. Within minutes, we've created a burning barrier of bodies that the remaining infected mindlessly walk into. The smell is indescribable, sweet and putrid, like barbecued meat left rotting in the sun. Every person up here has learned to breathe through their mouth during flame operations. Ammunition count from all teams, I order. This is the constant balance. Conserve supplies versus ensure effective defense. Every bullet spent here is one we won't have for the next assault. Team Alpha 60%, Team Bravo 75%, Team Charlie 40%, Team Delta 55%. The numbers tell the story of our situation. We're surviving, but each day costs us resources we can't replace. The ammunition depot in the basement has enough supplies for perhaps another week of heavy fighting. After that, we'll be relying primarily on the flamethrower systems and whatever melee weapons we can improvise. I scan the perimeter again through my binoculars. The infected mass continues to press against our barriers, but the immediate assault has been blunted. Bodies burn in heaps around our fortifications, and the remaining infected mill about without direction, occasionally wandering off towards some distant stimulus, only to return hours later. General Sergeant Gabble appears at my elbow again. Request from Dr. Stone. She needs to know our evacuation protocols for the medical facility. She's got 14 patients who can't be moved quickly if we're breached. Another impossible decision. The medical facility is on the second floor, easily defensible but difficult to evacuate. Moving critical patients during combat would likely kill them, but leaving them behind isn't an option either. Tell her we hold the day. His position, I reply. No evacuation protocols because we don't retreat. This is where we make our stand. Gable nods and heads back downstairs. Through the smoke and chaos, I catch glimpses of movement in the windows below. Civilians going about the business of survival, cooking meals over improvised stoves, caring for children, maintaining weapons. They've adapted to this new reality with remarkable resilience. The radio crackles in my earpiece. General Fox, this is Monitor Station. We're picking up civilian radio chatter from Alexandria. Sounds like a group of survivors holed up in a shopping mall requesting assistance. More survivors means more people we might be able to save, but it also means diverting resources we can't spare. Every rescue mission is a gamble that could cost us defenders we need here. Monitor only, I decide. Log their frequency for possible future contact, but we can't spare personnel for rescue operations. Each choice feels like cutting away pieces of my humanity, but the alternative is losing everyone under my protection. The infected don't offer the luxury of noble gestures. As the morning sun climbs higher, the immediate assault begins to fragment. Individual infected wander away from the main group, following whatever random stimuli catch their attention. This is typical behavior. They cluster when drawn by noise or activity, but disperse when those stimuli fade. All teams maintain watch, but conserve ammunition, I command. Looks like we've got a temporary lull. I take a moment to survey our fortress from this elevated position. The Pentagon stands like an island of human determination in a sea of chaos. Smoke rises from a dozen fires across the metropolitan area. In the distance, I can see the Washington Monument still standing, though the city around it appears largely empty. 22 days ago, this was the nerve center of American military power. Today it's simply home to 800 people who refuse to give up. Tomorrow we'll face another assault, make more impossible choices and lose more good people. But today, the fortress holds. The midday sun beats down mercilessly as I reload my rifle for what feels like the 100th time today. The heat amplifies everything. The stench of burning flesh, the metallic taste of blood in the air, the suffocating weight of smoke that hangs over our position like a shroud. Sweat mixes with grime on my face as I peer through the scope at the latest wave approaching from the northwest. Jesus Christ, mutters Corporal Dale beside me, his voice from shouting orders. Where the hell are they all coming from? I don't answer, because I don't have an answer. The infected just keep appearing. Hundreds upon hundreds, streaming in from every direction. They're drawn by the noise of our defenses, the smoke from our fires, maybe just the concentration of living flesh packed inside these walls. Whatever pulls them here, they arrive in endless waves, Flamethrower Team Alpha, you've got a massive cluster building up in Sector 3. I bark into my radio, light them up before they reach critical mass. The response comes immediately, a roaring jet of flame that turns 40 infected into human torches. But for every group we burn down, 2 more appear on the horizon. The mathematics of our situation are becoming undeniable. General Staff Sergeant Enos scrambles across the rooftop, keeping low as sporadic gunfire erupts from the eastern positions. We've got a problem at the main gate. The bodies are piling too high. The infected are using their own dead as ramps. I raise my binoculars and survey the carnage below. 3 weeks of constant warfare have created mountains of corpses around our perimeter. Burned, shot and dismembered bodies stack against our concrete barriers like grotesque hills. The fresh infected simply walk over these mounds of their predecessors, climb higher with each assault. What about the welded steel plates on the side entrances? I ask Enos. Still secure, but the body piles are reaching second-story windows on the eastern side. If they get much higher, he doesn't need to finish. If the infected can reach window level, our defensive advantages disappear. We'll be fighting them inside the building itself. A thunderous crash echoes from the southern perimeter, followed by screams and urgent radio chatter. I swing my scope toward the sound and feel my stomach drop. Several infected have managed to breach through a drainage outlet. A gap we'd overlooked in our initial fortifications, now revealed as bodies, shifted the accumulated corpses. All teams converge on southern breach. I shout into my radio. Teams Charlie and Delta maintain flamethrower coverage on the gap. I watch through my scope as infected immediately begin funneling through the opening like water through a crack in a dam. Our soldiers pour concentrated fire into the breach, but the infected keep coming, climbing over their own dead to reach the living flesh beyond. The distinctive crack of sniper fire echoes across the courtyard as Private Lerman systematically picks off infected emerging from the breach. Each shot is perfect, precise headshot that drop targets instantly. But even her exceptional marksmanship can't stem the tide of bodies pouring through the gap. "Lerman, how many rounds left?" I call into my radio. 14, sir," comes the immediate reply. After that, switching to my M4. 14 rounds. In a normal engagement, that would be plenty for a sniper of her caliber. Against an endless horde of infected, it's barely a delay. Master Sergeant Andrews appears at my elbow. "General, ammunition status is critical across all positions. We're down to 20% reserves. 20%. At our current rate of consumption, that gives us maybe 2 hours of sustained combat. After that, we'll be relying on sidearms, bayonets, and whatever melee weapons we can improvise." "Order selective fire only," I command. "Head shot at close range and get me an estimate on our diesel fuel reserves for the flamethrowers." Andrews nods and speaks rapidly into his radio. Below us, I can see the infected pressing harder against every section of our perimeter. They're drawn by the battle sounds, the screams, the scent of blood. Each gunshot brings more of them. The radio crackles with urgent transmission from the eastern wall. "This is Team Bravo. We've got a massive breach developing. The body pile is shifting. It's like an avalanche of corpses." I sprint across the rooftop toward the eastern position, my boots splashing through puddles of rainwater mixed with blood and ash. What I see makes my stomach turn. The mountain of infected bodies we've been building for 3 weeks has reached a critical mass. The weight of fresh infected climbing over it has caused a partial collapse, creating a slope that leads directly to our second-story windows. "All eastern teams fall back to secondary positions," I order. "Prepare for building breach." Through my binoculars, I watch infected stumble through shattered windows on the building's eastern face. They move with arms reaching forward, mouths agape in silent hunger. a woman in a torn business suit missing half her face, an elderly man dragging intestines behind him, a teenager whose skull has been partially crushed, but who keeps moving. Staff Sergeant Gable's voice crackles through my earpiece. "General, we've got contact on the second floor, at least a dozen infected in the eastern corridor. Fall back in good order," I reply, already moving toward the stairwell. "Don't let them separate you from your team." The sound of gunfire intensifies as our perimeter defenders engage infected at close range. The sharp crack of M4 carbines mixes with the deeper boom of shotguns and the occasional burst from our remaining machine gun positions. Between the weapons fire, I can hear the moans of infected and the shouted orders of sergeants trying to maintain unit cohesion. "Sir?" Private Lerman's voice crackles through my earpiece from her spotting position. Massive movement from the northeast. The main horde. "Sir, there's got to be tens of thousands of them stretching back down Columbia Pike." Tens of thousands. The thought chills me to the bone. But our fortifications are designed to create bottlenecks. Only small groups can squeeze through the breaches at any given time. It's like trying to empty an ocean through a straw. Deadly, but manageable if we can maintain our defensive positions. A tremendous explosion rocks the building as one of our improvised explosive devices detonates in the southern courtyard. Through the smoke, I see body parts scattered across the concrete and at least 15 infected, obliterated by the blast. But the explosion has also attracted more infected from the surrounding area. Fresh hordes shambling toward the sound of destruction. "Morse," I call to our chief engineer. "How long to reinforce that southern breach? With what materials, sir?" Morse's voice comes back strained. "We've used everything we had for the initial fortifications. I can weld some steel plates from inside the building, but that'll take time. We don't have time. Everything comes down to time. Time to shore up defenses, time to conserve ammunition, time to evacuate civilians if necessary, and we're running out of all of it." The radio crackles with incoming transmission from our communication center. "General Fox, this is Monitor Station. We're receiving emergency broadcasts from Fort Belvoir. They're under massive assault and requesting immediate evacuation support. Fort Belvoir, our last known military contact. If they fall, the Pentagon becomes the only remaining organized military resistance in the entire Washington metropolitan area." "Tell them we're combat ineffective for rescue operations," I reply, hating the words as I speak them. "Wish them luck and Godspeed." Another section of our eastern perimeter erupts in gunfire as more infected pour through the windows. I can hear Staff Sergeant Gable shouting orders to his team, coordinating their fall back to the central corridors. The sharp staccato of automatic weapons fire is punctuated by the wet sounds of bullets hitting flesh and the crash of furniture being overturned as barricades. "General, this is Team Bravo." The voice in my earpiece is tight with panic. "We've got infected reaching the rooftop. The body pile on the eastern wall has reached critical height. My blood runs cold. The windows were supposed to be completely secure, too high for infected to reach, protected by the elevation of our building. If they've reached window level, it means the body piles have grown beyond our worst projections." "How many?" I demand, already moving toward the eastern section with my rifle ready. "At least a dozen, sir. They're climbing over mountains of their own dead. The corpses are stacked 15 feet high against the eastern wall. Of course, 3 weeks of killing thousands of infected around our perimeter has created the very ramps they need to reach us. The infected don't plan or strategize, but they'll mindlessly walk over any obstacle, including endless piles of their fallen predecessors. I reach the eastern edge and I immediately see the problem. Below us, corpses are stacked like a macabre mountain against the building's side. Fresh infected walk up this slope of rotting flesh, their feet finding purchase on rib cages and skulls. 3 infected have already reached a second-story window and are clawing at the reinforced glass. I open fire on the closest infected, a man in a torn business suit missing half his face. The first shot takes him with no effect. The second shot destroys his brain and sends him tumbling back down the pile of bodies. The glass finally gives way with a tremendous crash. Infected begin pouring through the window like water through a burst dam below us. Our soldiers engage them with everything they have. Rifle fire, shotgun blasts, even bayonets and improvised clubs when ammunition runs low. Team Bravo, status report, I call out. 6 down, but more keep climbing the body pile. Everyone we kill just adds to their ramp. The cruel irony of our situation becomes clear. Our success in killing infected has created the very problem that's now threatening our survival. Each body we've dropped has contributed to the mountain that's allowing fresh infected to reach our previously secure positions. But the flamethrowers are all focused on ground-level threats. Moving them to roof defense means leaving gaps in our perimeter coverage below. Negative on flamethrower reposition. I decide, use rifle fire and fall back to secondary positions if necessary. More infected appear at the top of the corpse pile, hauling themselves over the rotting mass with that horrible persistence. Some are missing limbs, others have massive wounds that would kill any living human. But they keep climbing, keep advancing, keep reaching toward the sound of gunfire and human voices. A massive explosion rocks the building, followed by screams from the southern perimeter. Through my radio, I hear frags, mented reports, drainage breach expanding, infected breakthrough, soldiers falling back to secondary positions. All teams implement fallback protocol, I order. Abandon outer perimeter and establish defensive lines at the building entrances. This is the moment I've been dreading for 3 weeks, the moment when our fortress becomes a trap. When we transition from defending a perimeter to fighting for survival inside the building itself. The sound of combat intensifies as our forces execute a fighting withdrawal. The disciplined crack of rifle fire gives way to the chaotic noise of close-quarters battle. Shotgun blasts echo through concrete corridors, the distinctive sound of bayonet combat, metal on bone, grunts of exertion, the wet impact of steel meeting flesh. General. Sergeant Gable appears at my side, his uniform torn and face bloodied. Dr. Stone is requesting evacuation orders for the medical facility. She's got patients who can't be moved. Tell her to barricade in place, I reply. We're not abandoning anyone, but even as I say it, I know we might not have a choice. The infected have reached our building. In minutes, maybe hours, we'll be fighting room to room inside the Pentagon itself. I take one last look across our compromised defenses. Infected pour through multiple breaches now, shambling across our courtyard. Our flamethrower teams continue pouring fire into the mass, but there are too many gaps, too many directions of attack. The distinctive whine of our last remaining machine gun echoes across the courtyard as Corporal Dale lays down, suppressing fire on a group of 50 infected emerging from the drainage breach. Tracer rounds streak through the smoke, each bright line marking another attempt to stem the tide of rotting humanity. "Dale, conserve your ammunition," I shout into my radio. "Short bursts only." "Roger that, sir, but they just keep coming." A tremendous crash from inside the building signals another breach point. The infected have found a weakness we didn't anticipate. Probably a loading dock or service entrance that. T seemed too small to matter. Now every minor gap in our defenses becomes a potential catastrophe. The radio crackles with Morse's voice. "General, this is engineering. We're implementing lockdown protocols on all interior blast doors. That'll buy us time, but it also means we're cutting off escape routes. Lockdown protocols. The Pentagon's post-911 security features become our last line of defense. Blast doors designed to contain explosions will now contain us, and anyone who doesn't make it to the safe zones in time." "Do it," I order. "Please seal us in." As I speak, Infected begin appearing at stairwell entrances. Their moans echo through the concrete corridors below us. After 3 weeks of holding the perimeter, the real battle is just beginning. The infected don't understand tactics or fear or survival. They only understand hunger. And now they're inside our fortress, driven by the scent of 800 civilians who have nowhere left to run. I check my ammunition. 2 magazines remaining. Around me, the rooftop battle intensifies as more infected climb the body piles. Below us, I can hear the slam of blast doors sealing, cutting off our retreat. Through the smoke and chaos, I catch glimpses of our defenders executing their final fallback. Marines carrying wounded comrades, soldiers sharing their last magazines with teammates, civilians helping to establish barricades with whatever furniture they can find. The Pentagon has become our tomb. The only question now is whether we'll take enough of these things with us to matter. All personnel, this is General Fox. I announce over the building-wide intercom we are implementing final defensive protocols. All civilians to designated safe rooms, all military personnel to assigned defensive positions. We hold here, we fight here, and if necessary, we die here. But even as I speak those words, I'm already planning our next move because, surrender isn't in the vocabulary of the United States military. And as long as one soldier draws breath, this fight continues. The fortress is falling, but we're not finished yet. The evening sun casts long shadows through the smoke as I reload my sidearm with my last magazine. The rifle ran dry 20 minutes ago, and now we're down to pistols and whatever makeshift weapons we can find. The Pentagon's corridors echo with gunfire, screams, and moaning of infected who've breached our inner defenses. General Fox. Corporal Dale's voice crackles through my earpiece, strain evident in every word. Third floor is compromised. We've got infected in the eastern corridor. I key my radio while putting 2 rounds into the skull of an infected in a blood-stained janitor's uniform. The creature had been clawing at a sealed blast door, its fingernails worn down to bone stumps from hours of mindless scratching. Fall back to the central stairwell. All teams converge on the command center. The blast doors held for 3 hours. 3 precious hours that allowed us to evacuate most civilians to the reinforced safe rooms in the building's core. But the infected found ways through ventilation shafts we'd overlooked, maintenance tunnels that weren't on our schematics. They don't think, don't plan, but their relentless persistence eventually finds every weakness. I duck as automatic gunfire erupts from the corridor behind me. Master Sergeant Andrews appears around the corner, his face grim with exhaustion and blood loss from a gash across his forehead. His uniform is torn in 3 places. Makeshift bandages visible underneath. "Sir, we've lost contact with the medical facility," he reports between labored breaths. "Last transmission from Dr. Stone was 15 minutes ago. Something about barricading the surgery room. 14 patients who couldn't be moved. Dr. Stone and her medical staff staying behind to protect them. The weight of command settles heavier on my shoulders. I close my eyes for a moment, then force myself to focus on the immediate crisis. "What's our personnel count?" I ask Andrews as we move toward the stairwell, stepping carefully over the corpse of an infected, wearing torn Pentagon security uniform. "Approximately 60 combat effective remaining, sir. Maybe 20 civilians still mobile. The rest he doesn't finish, but the implication is clear. We've gone from 800 souls to 80 in less than 6 hours. Every defensive position lost means more people dead or turned. Every ammunition shortage means more hand-to-hand combat against creatures that feel no pain and never tire." The stairwell fills with the sound of boots as surviving personnel converge from different floors. I spot Private Lerman descending from the upper levels, her sniper rifle slung across her back and a commandeered shotgun in her hands. Blood spatters her uniform and her usually steady demeanor shows cracks of exhaustion. "Rooftop positions are overrun, sir," she reports, her voice from shouting orders. The body piles reached the 3rd floor. "Had to abandon the flamethrower posts. Our primary defensive advantage gone. The diesel fuel reserves that powered those systems are now useless. Wait. We're down to small arms, limited ammunition, and the determination of soldiers who refuse to surrender." "Sir," Staff Sergeant Enos emerges from a lower corridor, supporting a wounded Marine whose left arm hangs useless at his side. "Basement levels are secure, but we've got infected trying to breach the blast doors from multiple directions. Morris is down there trying to reinforce the seals." Chief Warrant Officer Morse, our engineer who transformed this building into a fortress, if anyone can keep those blast doors sealed, it's him. But even his expertise has limits when faced with constant pressure of thousands of infected bodies. A tremendous crash echoes from somewhere above us, followed by the sound of shattering glass and triumphant moans. Another window breached. The building groans around us like a living thing in pain. Structural stress creating sounds I've never heard before. "All personnel to the command bunker," I order over the radio. "Implement final fallback positions. Anyone who's bitten or showing symptoms, I'm sorry, but you know what you have to do." The command bunker was designed to withstand nuclear attack. 6 feet of reinforced concrete, independent air filtration, emergency supplies for a month. It's our last refuge, but it's also our potential tomb. As we move through the lower corridors, I hear Staff Sergeant Gable's voice echoing from ahead. "Contact front. Multiple infected in the basement. We need support down here." The sound of sustained gunfire erupts from his direction. Rapid crack of assault rifles mixed with shotgun booms. Someone screams in pain. I grab Lerman and 2 Marines. "Andrews, get the civilians into the bunker. We're going to clear a path to Gable's position." The basement corridors are a maze of concrete and flickering emergency lighting. The sound of gunfire grows louder with each step, punctuated by wet sounds of bullets hitting flesh. We find Gable's team pinned down in the main electrical room, infected pouring through a ventilation grate they'd torn open with bare hands. 6 soldiers firing into a stream of rotting humanity that seems endless. "Lerman, tak." "Either high position," I shout, pointing to a raised platform. Everyone else concentrated fire on the breach point. For the next 10 minutes we engage in close quarters combat that no training prepares you for. These aren't enemies who take cover. They're driven purely by hunger, climbing over their own dead to reach us. A woman in a nurse's uniform keeps advancing, even after losing half her skull. "Morse!" I call out over the gunfire. "Can you seal that ventilation access?" "Working on it, sir," comes the reply from behind electrical panels. "Need 30 seconds. 30 seconds might as well be 30 minutes. But Gable's team holds the line. Precise shots, dropping infected faster than they can climb through the breach. The sound of industrial welding fills the air as Morse seals the grate with torn metal plates. The stream of infected stops, leaving us with only the dozen that made it through. "Clear," Lerman calls out as the last infected drops. We've bought time, but at a cost. 2 of Gable's soldiers are down, 1 dead, another bitten, and now sitting against the wall with his sidearm in hand. Private Jackson, barely 19 years old. "Sir," Jackson says, his voice remarkably steady. "Tell my parents I did my duty." I kneel beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You did more than duty, son. You were a hero." The single gunshot echoes through the concrete corridors. Another good soldier lost. I close Jackson's eyes and take his dog tags. All teams status report. I call into my radio as we move back toward the command bunker. "Command center secured," comes Andrews' voice. 47 personnel and 18 civilians inside the bunker. Blast doors sealed. Building is compromised on all levels. We're completely surrounded. 47 soldiers and 18 civilians from 800 to 65 in a single day. Each lost life weighs on my conscience. The bunker's blast door seals with a hydraulic hiss that sounds like finality. Inside, fluorescent lighting reveals the faces of our survivors, soldiers and civilians alike, all marked by exhaustion and fear. Dr. Stone is here, having somehow made it out of the medical facility with 3 of her patients. General, she approaches me. I need to report something. The infected, they're showing signs of sensory degradation. The fresher ones respond to sound and movement, but the older ones seem to be losing that capability. Interesting information, though not immediately useful when we're trapped in a bunker with limited supplies. How long can we hold out in here? I ask Morse, who's examining the bunker systems. Air filtration is independent. We can stay sealed for weeks if necessary. Food and water, he pauses, calculating. Maybe 10 days for this many people. 10 days. Not long enough for any rescue operation, assuming there's anyone left to mount one. The bunker's communications equipment crackles to life as Private Lerman adjusts frequencies. Static fills the air. Then a clear voice emerges. Sir. Lerman approaches with hope in her voice. I'm picking up transmissions from multiple military units. Fort Bragg is still operational. Norfolk Naval Base is reporting successful containment. We're not the only ones left. For the first time in hours, I feel something resembling hope. Other bastions of resistance are holding. The United States military hasn't fallen completely. Can you establish two-way communication? I ask. She works with focused intensity, adjusting frequencies. Soon we're hearing status reports from units across the eastern seaboard. Fort Bragg has 15,000 troops. Naval Station Norfolk has evacuated hundreds of thousands to offshore vessels. This is General Fox at the Pentagon. I transmit when Lerman signals clear channel. We have 65 personnel holding in the command bunker. Building is compromised, but bunker remains secure. The response comes immediately. General Fox, this is General Richardson at Fort Bragg. Glad to hear you're still operational. What's your current situation? I look around at our survivors, exhausted soldiers with EMP. Time magazines. Wounded civilians, barely able to stand. We're secure for now, but surrounded. Request extraction when possible. Copy that, General. We're organizing a relief operation, but it's going to take time. We need to coordinate with multiple units and clear approach routes. Estimate 72 hours minimum before we can reach your position. 72 hours. 3 days. Trapped in this bunker while infected swarm the building above us. I can already hear the sound of bodies pressing against our blast doors. A constant percussion that never stops. Understood, I reply. We'll hold position and await extraction. As night falls above us, not that we can see it from our concrete tomb, we organize our defenses. The bunker has multiple access points, each equipped with blast doors, but those doors won't hold forever under constant pressure. All personnel, listen up. I address our survivors. We've held the Pentagon for 22 days against impossible odds. Today we lost the building, but we didn't lose our mission. We've saved dozens of lives and maintained resistance. I look around at the faces watching me, young Marines, government workers, families who trusted us to keep them safe. We've established contact with Fort Bragg. They're organizing a relief operation. In 72 hours, help is coming. Until then, we hold this position. We've got supplies, we've got each other, and we've got hope. The response is subdued, but genuine. These people have been through hell, but they're still here, still fighting. Dr. Stone approaches me after the crowd disperses. General, I need to discuss our medical situation. Several wounded need more care than I can provide here, and some civilians are showing psychological stress. What do you need? I ask. Time, mostly, and proper medical facilities when we're extracted. What we've been through, it changes people. I nod. Understanding. Combat stress is real, and these civilians have experienced more than most soldiers ever will. Morse appears with equipment diagnostics. General, I've been checking our systems. Been the bunkers solid, air, power, communications all functioning. We can definitely hold for 3 days. Probably longer if needed. What about the blast doors? They'll hold. Designed for much more pressure than we're facing. The infected can press against them all they want. They're not getting through. As I settle in for what promises to be a long night, I think about the journey from 800 souls to 65. Every death weighs on my conscience. But leadership isn't about avoiding hard decisions. It's about making them when no one else can. The infected above us may have taken our fortress, but they haven't broken our spirit. In 3 days, help arrives. Until then, we wait, we hope, and we remember that as long as one American soldier draws breath, the fight continues. Outside our steel doors, thousands of infected press against barriers they can't breach. Inside, 65 Americans prepare to outlast the darkness. The fortress has fallen, but the war is far from over. General Matthew Fox, United States Army, holding fast in the Pentagon command bunker. Help is coming. We just have to survive long enough to see it. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams.